Half-Life still remains one of the most quintessential classic PC games, however it's important to remember it's not strictly just a PC game. It was, after all, also released on the PlayStation 2, and while this version didn't get any of the expansions that the PC version got, like Blue Shift or Opposing Forces, it did actually have its very own expansion, Decay, which to this day remains exclusive to this version of the original adventures of Gordon Freeman. Not only that, but it also remains to this very day the only real co-op experience in the Half-Life world. You can simply access it from the main menu without even having to beat the main campaign first. And is split into 9 chapters with an additional secret one called Zen Attacks, which you only get access to if you A-rank every single chapter, though I'm definitely not psychotic enough to do that. And while it is intended for local co-op with another person, if you are alone like me and you can't get anyone else to play with you, you can actually play through it solo. The way it works if you choose the one player option is that you can use the select button to instantly change between the 2 playable characters, Dr. Gina Cross and Dr. Colette Green. It's not one of those co-op games where the 2 characters have different or complementary skills, so if you're playing with someone else, the choice of who gets whom pretty much just comes down to whose hairdo you prefer more. And just like that, you can embark on your adventure into Black Mesa yet again, once again being able to experience all that's gone down there from a different perspective, a la Blue Shift or Opposing Forces, with all of the events carried out by Gordon Freeman being referenced or happening off screen, and you having to suffer the consequences. And yes, you saw it correctly, you can die in the opening explosion, so make sure to save first. However, after a fantastic strong start, seeing the carnage and the initial battle, sometimes you can barely even tell the facility is being invaded until you see another monster. It does definitely feel like in the main campaign, the tension in the whole situation is a lot higher, but oh well. But what about the gameplay itself? Thankfully, they didn't take the lazy route of just having more enemies that require double the firepower, with their mount spawning in pretty much being doable by just a single person, even if you're playing alone. Though it's important to note that if you are playing solo, the character that isn't currently controlled by you will still fire upon enemies and have some self-defense instincts. Or at least sometimes, and also they will not move for cover, instead resorting to firing the weapon at point blank at all times if it comes to it. Instead, a lot of the time it comes down to a co-op school of having one person do a thing to allow another person to do another thing, which especially in some chapters can result in some players having quite a bit of downtime, while the other one is doing all of the exciting stuff. Again, it's not super egregious, but it does definitely happen sometimes. Though it is still Half-Life, it still has some pretty excellent level design that really does make the most out of the co-op gameplay. And while it's not required for both doctors to reach the finish line, it's also important to note that if one of them dies, then it's game over, even if it's the one you're not currently controlling. Given how there's 2 scientists now, I would have hoped that it would solve a major issue with the core game. Because of its mega linear nature, if a single battle just took too much of your HP or too much of your ammo, then you might just be stuck bashing your head against the wall, trying to make your way through the next wave of enemies on a sliver of HP and just a few bullets because the developers didn't put any refill stations close by. You would imagine that a situation would be somewhat improved with 2 characters, but not always. There's some segments where you get no assistance for super long portions of the level, and because once again both Dr. Cross and Dr. Green must stay alive, it becomes an exercise in annoyance, especially because you can't trade ammo either, and I sometimes found myself with one of the characters having an ammo stockpile to shame the United States, but not even a teaspoon of blood left in them, while the other one had near max health and max armor, but all they had to fight with was the crowbar and a single grenade. In those instances, the game can be mega annoying as you just try everything to either run past enemies or somehow miraculously manage to survive with everything going on. And again, especially if you're trying to manage both at the same time, then the situation can often seem almost unwinnable. And don't get me started on a one part where you're basically facing away from all the action, turning a valve, and you just have to hope that your AI controlled companion watches your back. It's one of the more egregious examples of this issue in this campaign, and especially annoying given how in my situation I once again had one of the characters be a single touch away from death but with all of the ammo, while the other one had nothing to fight with but all of the HP. This campaign carries over the other quirks that were exclusive to the PS2 version, like for example the auto-locking system. Given how you are playing on a controller, it is a huge help. It's also great because it even allows you to keep a track of enemies even when they're out of sight, which can come in super useful. The other interesting thing about the PS2 port is this very weird tilting effect whenever you walk, almost as if everyone showed up to Black Mesa drunk. Maybe that's why Gordon Freeman was late to work, huh? While you do also sort of get it on PC, you have to go out of your way to press either A or D whilst walking forward to get the effect, whilst when dealing with a sensitive analog joystick, it's a whole other story. Once you do get used to all of this, the auto-locking, switching between characters, and exactly how the co-op logic of this whole campaign works, it's a pretty enjoyable experience. Especially when you get used to switching between characters mid-fight and you get to pull off some pretty awesome stunts by doing so. Oh, at least until you get to this part in Chapter 5. When I was originally in this room, where you can't open a door from the other side, I actually thought I soft-locked the game because I couldn't find any way out. There was a vent here, however, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't crouch jump into it. Until I found an online guide telling you to basically jump off of your crouched partner to get into the vent, which is kind of impossible if you're playing solo. But then I realized you can actually line them up in a way where you can just jump on one of their heads and into the vents. So thankfully the game didn't end for me there. And just like that, you make your way through the chapters, fighting the typical enemies, using typical weapons, helping the scientists reclaim different areas of Black Mesa. You literally know how it plays out if you played Half-Life or any of its expansions, though it's important to note that in here you don't go to Zen at any point. Then there's of course the bonus chapter where you actually play as two Vortigaunts, just to help spice things up a bit, meaning that across the 9 chapters and the bonus one it's a very meaty experience, and the adventures of Doctors Green and Cross helping out Keller is just unique enough, even without the whole co-op thing, to make it stand out against the other expansions and the core campaign. It's still the absolutely fantastic level design you'd expect from Half-Life, even if it wasn't made by the main Valve team. However, unfortunately, as I alluded to before, if you want to play it, then there's only one way of doing so. That's right, this expansion wasn't re-released anywhere, not even on Steam. There is actually a mod being made, which recreates the entire Decay experience, but when/if that will get released, no one knows. There is actually an older mod that ported the experience over to PC, but that thing pretty much hasn't been updated since 2008, so your mileage may vary. So in the meantime, the best you can do is grab a copy of Half-Life on eBay, fire up your old PS2, and enjoy some good old-fashioned split-screen co-op with your buddy, partner, or whoever else you pay to hang out with you. Though I'd still recommend playing on a larger, more modern display, because given the nature of split-screen games, that way you can actually see what's going on. Or you can just emulate it if you want. I'm not judging. Anyway, that's what it's. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to subscribe, like, whatever, and I'll see you all in whatever I make next. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.